Luckily, my personal purpose is to create a world that is better led, which is also the purpose of our organization. And I think during the disruption, we've seen good leadership, we've seen abysmal leadership, and we've seen a lot in the middle. And that shaped the cultures around those leaders. So I want to spend a bit of time on that, about 10 minutes. A little bit about what was it like at the beginning of the crisis? What is it like now? And how do you re-energize, reboot the organization to perform and to create the connection, the purpose in a sustainable way going forward? Now, I'm sure throughout the conference, you've heard over and over, this is a period of uncertainty, a period of disruption, unprecedented disruption, and it is. And I'm not surprised by that. But what I am surprised by is this is the first time I've ever talked to CEOs who are usually sort of the most confident people I know. And they're saying, it's like looking into a fog when I look forward. I'm guessing on 2021. I don't know exactly what's happening. And I was with the CEO the other day that was saying, this is the first time in my entire life, third time CEO, where I cannot tell you. I can only make a guess, and we're going to have to adjust as we go. So energized, agile organizations, when you're going in the fog, you're going to bump into things. You need to be agile and you need the energy. I know the solution is not a fatigued and wary organization. So how do you get those attributes back? Now, in the beginning of the crisis, most companies I talked to said, it's amazing. We are energetic, we're collaborative, we're agile. This is better than we've ever been before. Most of them were saying, I hope this lasts. I'll be honest, at the time I was saying, unless you do some things, it won't. So let me explain why I was saying that. So I'm not able to change my slide. In the early crisis, there was this energy, this collaboration, this agility. People felt great. That's what people were reporting from companies around the world. We're becoming more virtual. We're delivering on promises, etc. Today, it's a different story. Most organizations are saying we're feeling fatigued. I'm getting my silos back. Some of those silos are even stronger than they were before. And people are just done. And that started in about October. They were saying October feels like December. People just trying to limp their way to the end of the year. Now, there's a bifurcation point coming up, and there's going to be some choice points for every leader, every organization in terms of, do I turn in this current situation on a reignition path and create that energy, that collaboration, that agility, but in a sustainable way? So start to re-energize the organization. Most organizations will continue down the path they're on today, and they will likely over time find their way back to some sort of normal, but they'll have the lost opportunity as they go down to the bottom of that dip. And for some, not regaining the energy, the agility, the collaboration will spell the end. So I'm going to spend some time on that reignition path. Now, years ago, we worked with a number of universities, with Stanford, Michigan, USC, in a project called the Thriving Project. And we're trying to identify, why are there some leaders that no matter what environment you put in them, disrupted or not, seem to outperform? And what is it about those organizations that are able to continue on a growth trajectory, continue to succeed, no matter what's thrown at them? Now, three things came out. The first is a purpose mindset. Those organizations and those individuals had a firm sense of purpose. And this isn't the coming up with a purpose statement, which is a good thing to do. This is actually embedding purpose in every person in the organization. So they're personally connected to what you're doing in the world, the contribution you want to make. The second is a vitality mindset, which is that positive energy, collaboration, resilience that connects people. And the third is a growth mindset. So the ability to invent, reinvent, be adaptive, agile, learning, take risks, learn again. Those three things in balance create a thriving leader, create a thriving organization. And the benefits are indisputable in terms of performance. If you look at what most people are concerned about right now, which is perceived burnout, stress, huge impact there. greater agility, and greater trust and engagement in the organization. So if you can get those three things into play, you can shift your organization, you can build the energy, the enthusiasm to navigate what it looks like a very difficult environment. Now, so why did it look like thriving early on in the pandemic? Our brain is broken up into different parts. Now, I'm going to focus on two primarily, but when we're in a thriving organization or thriving individual, you are most often in your seeking and thinking system. So you are focused on the possibilities, you're looking forward. When we're not thriving, we're often in the fear system. So that is a system that will drive different sort of outcomes. Now, as an animal, from when we were a single-celled animal to today, the fear system and the seeking system are always working together. So the seeking system is looking at possibilities. So for an animal, it's usually food or procreation. Fear is threat. Now, the fear system is always going to be stronger, and that is because you cannot eat or procreate if you're dead. So it is the stronger system, it's the older system. So as you turn this corner, the key is going to be to move from that fear system to the seeking system, to that thinking system, and pointing in that direction through the thriving organizational lens. Now, the fear system can mimic thriving. So why did it feel the way it felt early in the pandemic? During the early pandemic, there was a sense of adrenaline, excitement. Everything was new. We were all on Zoom or Teams or whatever. We were solving things together, feeling connected, supporting one another. So early on, that feeling of vitality was there. The second is we did shift. We finally had a common purpose. And the common purpose was a common enemy, which was a virus. So that enabled everyone to be pointing in the same direction. And the third, it felt agile because there was a lot of reactive change, the move to virtual environments, changing digital systems so that you can survive in this environment, but it's reactive survival. And that feels like thriving. This is also the recipe for pretty much every dictator in history. Get a group of people focused on a common enemy, tell them they're special, get them excited, and then make some reactive changes that start to show, well, we're the ones, we're making we're going to change this place. So it does feel like thriving, but it is not lasting. Early on in my career, I worked with a gas company, and they would say every time there's an explosion, you know what, the silos go away, we work together, we find solutions, etc. That's because there was a crisis. So it is built in our brain to go into this for a period of time to deal with the crisis, and it feels like thriving, but it can't last. Now, with that gas company, the explosion, you're talking about hours or days. We're now talking about months. And people have been in this system for a long time, and it starts to wane and it drains energy. So the question is, how do you shift from here to moving towards becoming a thriving organization in the midst of this crisis? So there are three simple things. First, we're social animals. We have been, if you look at hominins, we've been social animals for about 4 million years. If you look at Homo sapiens, for about 250,000 years. A disproportionate amount of our brain is dedicated to social interaction. And when we're in social interaction, we're releasing neurochemicals. The main one in connection is oxytocin. And when we were designing organizations in the pre-pandemic world, we're looking for creating collisions, making sure people were running into each other at the coffee machine, stopping by offices, talking to and from meetings. In those interactions, we're releasing oxytocin, and it's an optimism and connection drug. People are not getting enough of it today. They are not getting those interactions. So they're starved of that feeling of connection. So in a virtual design, it's creating informal interaction and collisions. The second is getting back to real purpose. So connecting every person in the organization to what are we trying to do in this world at a personal level. It doesn't matter, years ago, Viktor Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and it nailed down the point that when we have a higher purpose, we can traverse almost anything. Additionally, purpose is an energy creator, not an energy sapper. So that when we're going through things, when we're doing it with purpose, we actually feel more energy. And the third is a sense of control. Give people a sense of control. So responsive change, not reactive. What are those things you can change and get your organization focused on the things we can control and can change? There's so much in the world today that we can't control. If you focus on what you cannot control, you will wear yourself out. If you get yourself and your teams and your organization focused on those things that we can shape to improve our success going forward, they will have that sense of control. So that's that growth mindset and change. Those are the three doors that we have today to moving towards a thriving organization. Thriving organization is different from the crisis organization. It's sustainable. You can do it for years, and it actually generates energy rather than sapping energy. Now, one last thing I'd like to share with you in terms of getting your organization to a thriving place in the midst of this disruption. And that comes down to leadership. So this is a quote from a client of mine years ago, and he was taking on a new CEO role. And his comment was, "I knew my first priority was changing the culture." He also knew that it started with him. So organizations tend to be shadows of their leaders. And often leaders forget that what they do actually generates the energy in the organization. It generates the behavior in the organization, not what they say. So if you're trying to make that turn towards a thriving organizational culture, you don't do it without thriving leaders, without leaders that are high in vitality, bringing that energy, that connection, high in growth mindset, willing to learn, change, be different, do things differently, and high in personal purpose that's connected to the organizational purpose. If you get leaders there, then you have an organization that is ready to start to move to a different place. There's two types of growth. One is growth in terms of I'm learning about my environment. So there are leaders I meet that say, I'm curious about the Internet of Things. They don't stay just curious. They go and study it, and they learn it, and they know it. So what are those things in your environment you just have to know in order to traverse the space? The second is I'm willing to learn about myself, be authentic, make mistakes, admit when I make mistakes, admit where I'm learning. That's often more tough for leaders because they want to look perfect. You got to learn to not look perfect. Be comfortable with not knowing. So that's the high level. A little lower down, I would say, the way I'm looking at it today is the tag word I'm using, I guess, is think like a scientist. So years ago, Brian Cox did a speech and he said, if you want to be a scientist, get ready to fail a lot. And that's part of science. You form a hypothesis, you try some things, and often you fail. You go back to the drawing board. But the other thing about scientists is they live in the data. What does the data say to you? Now, there's a negative correlation between CEO performance and detail orientation, except on things that matter. So as a leader, go deep in the data on the things that matter. Now, if you look at the crisis, which leaders truly went to the scientists and the experts and understood what was going on, and that informed their decisions? Entirely different outcomes to leaders who had an intuitive feel for what this virus was and were making some decisions fly by the seat of their pants. And you look at the rates of infection, et cetera, in their space. So think like a scientist, get into the data, form hypothesis, try, and adjust. Purpose helps with that, if not by setting out a purpose, but which you should do. It's by having an approach that connects people personally to purpose. So if I can connect what I'm about with what we're about, that shifts me from that fear system to seeking, because purpose is out there. You never reach purpose. It's constantly that North Star that as you walk towards it, it just stays a little further ahead of you. So it's connecting people personally and role modeling that. So as a leader, not just running a program where everybody really thinks about purpose deeply, but as a leader, what am I about? What do I care about? What do I want in this world? What do I want for sustainability? What do I want for the communities we serve? What would happen what would it matter if we didn't exist as an organization? If we didn't exist, what would be missing? Get that clear. Now, where does that connect for me so that you're leading from purpose? People will dip in and out of fear. It's not like we're going to get out of fear entirely. But the ability to take control and focus on purpose leaves you more often in the seeking system, but it won't eliminate fear or anxiety completely. If you have a leader that doesn't see they need to change, you've got a real problem, because there's never been a period of time that's been pointing at change. You need to do things differently. Leading in a virtual digital environment is a different skill set. So if they simply don't see it, that's a bigger challenge, and you may want to rethink the leader. Getting there is the question. So some know I need to change, but I don't know what to do. The part of our brain necessary for behavioral change, because you're actually changing neural networks, is illiterate. So you could write them, you could do 360s, you could do anything else, set new leadership behaviors. It won't change people because it's accessing a part of the brain that's not responsible for change. So the only way to shift an adult is, well, there's two parts to it. One is you have to give them an experience of the world you'd like them to, of the ways you'd like them to be leading. And it's experience that gets to the part of the brain that changes our behavior. So you're doing it's actually a moment of insight. They see it, they feel it, and they start to understand what it is. The second part is in attention density. So if you want more agility, you can create the experience so that somebody has that insight on where they're not agile, what is the current thinking, and what's the potential thinking and ways of working. You need to focus that behavior over and over and over for at least 90 days. It's no surprise that I think Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, et cetera, are all 90-day programs. That is about the period where you have to have a high level of attention density on the things you're going to do differently. So those would be the two pieces. I don't know that you can't convince them. They have to have an experience where they go, oh, there's a better way. Then you need to keep the focus and start to build that neural strength so it becomes a habit. More open than any time in my life. There's more questions, more curiosity, more interest. The battle they're having is they're constantly fighting another fire. So can they give the attention density to the things they want to be? And often they get distracted by all the other things they have to do. Mm-hmm. You know, the 30 Zoom calls, the next thing, or Teams or whatever, the next problem that we're having with the customer. So they get distracted with the crisis. And so I don't think it's a lack of interest. It's actually carving out the time and getting rid of the distraction of the present so they can do it. The best example I can think of, and there's many examples, and a lot of the leaders we've worked with have been terrific, but the best would be CVS Caremark, and maybe people won't know them. They're a $150 billion pharmacy and pharmaceuticals distribution business. Early on, they set their purpose, and they were all connected to it as leaders, and it was to support the health and well-being of the communities they serve. A little while down the road, they realized that one of their biggest selling items was cigarettes and other tobacco products. And they realized that did not sit with their purpose. Multi-billion-dollar category. But they thought long and hard and thought, we cannot do this if we're going to live this purpose. They took cigarettes and other tobacco products off their shelves, lost that category, and took that risk. And what happened was the whole organization thought, wait a minute, you mean it. But equally importantly, customers started to walk across the street from their competitor because they thought, I believe what you believe. I believe that you really want to serve health and well-being. I want to shop with you. It was a matter of months. They'd more than replaced the loss of the category. So it's taking the idea, which is always nice, and making it real, sending those signposts that say, we're not kidding. We're going in that direction.